Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, May 5th. Happy Cinco de Mayo. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. On today's show, we have a special guest. Chiefs Chairman and CEO Clak Hunt joins us to discuss soccer. That's right. The FIFA World Cup with games in Kansas City draws near, and I got a chance to sit down with Hunt at his office at the Chiefs training complex to discuss a series of World Cup-related topics. We discuss Kansas City's readiness for the big stage, how the Hunt family got involved in soccer decades ago, Clak Hunt's role in helping develop professional soccer in the U.S., and more. Clak Hunt played a key role in Kansas City getting a seat at the table for the world's largest sporting event. I enjoyed our conversation and hope you will too. Later, I'll share what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. The first thing I wanted to ask you is, with somebody with as much on-site World Cup experience as you have, what's your level of anticipation of what is coming to Kansas City here in a month or so?
It's going to be really exciting. I think the citizens of Kansas City are going to be shocked in a good way by the number of tourists and the celebration that will take place over the course of the tournament. It'll be very common to see fans from whichever country at a restaurant, singing and playing music and cheering their team on. That's just the flavor of the World Cup. One of the great things is the blending of cultures from around the world and getting to experience that when you're in a city where World Cup games take place.
And you've experienced this firsthand so many times. If I've got the history correct, 1974 was your first World Cup. Germany, I believe.
Yes.
Didn't go in 78, but then haven't missed one since. And if you add it up, that's 12 World Cup experiences on multiple continents. Is this what you have seen and experienced when you go?
Absolutely. And it was also what attracted my dad to the sport of soccer, because his first significant exposure to the sport was through the World Cup, first watching the 1966 World Cup final between England and West Germany on TV. And he was captivated by the passion of the fans. And he also recognized that the stadiums and the field looked a little bit like the stadiums and fields that he was helping build for the American Football League. And because of that, he thought it was a great opportunity to bring the sport to the U.S. He envisioned playing games when the Texans or Chiefs and the other AFL teams were not playing. And I think as we went to World Cups over time, just seeing him enjoy and interact with the fans, we very quickly fell in love with the Brazilian fans and their teams. Of course, their teams were some of the best in the world and played very attractive soccer, but their fan bases were equally engaging with their yellow jerseys and in the samba dances and samba bands that followed them wherever they went.
Were World Cup finals part of your journeys, or did you just go to a handful of games when you were over there?
Yeah, so in the early years, we would go and stay for 2 or 3 weeks and would stay all the way through the final. The last several World Cups, I've not been to the final because I've had to try to fit it in between a lot of other things. And since the U.S. started qualifying in 1990, I've always made a point of going and seeing the U.S. play a game. And so I've always included a group stage U.S. game in the itinerary. And so that would pull me earlier in the tournament. My younger brother, Dan, has continued seeing as many finals as possible. And this summer, both of us will be in New York for the final.
Okay, for sure. Great. And maybe the U.S. bit there.
Yeah.
Ugh, hope so. Yeah, we'll see. They've got some work to do. But I can't help but wonder if that experience, is it related to your in the organization's interest in having the Chiefs play international games as often as you do?
I think certainly the exposure to the sport of soccer at the highest level, which included the World Cup, but also learning about the clubs where many of the World Cup players came from, had an impact on my dad. And in the 80s and 90s, he was, one of the first owners who was really pushing for the NFL to think about how can we grow internationally. And that resulted in playing preseason games and then later creating a league in Europe. At the end of the day, those initiatives didn't work, but we came back about 15 years later with the international series, which started with one game in the UK and has grown now to teams having marketing rights. And certainly it's something that we've embraced as an organization. And I think the perspective that I gained through attending those World Cups has been very helpful in that regard.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about your soccer background. You played youth soccer in Dallas. I think I read you were 7 when you first youth soccer. That was at that time certainly not as prevalent as it is now. I mean, you were I'm sure you were just one of a few guys in a few leagues that were playing youth soccer at the time.
That's exactly right. I've often said I was sort of the first wave of youth players to play in any kind of significant numbers in the city of Dallas. And the reason that it happened was because of my dad's involvement with the Dallas Tornado. Because most of the players who played on the Dallas Tornado, which was founded in the late 1960s, came from England.
Right.
And when the season wasn't in, they needed jobs to support themselves. So many of them started soccer camps and clinics. And so I went to their camps. I played in leagues that they'd helped form. And it was just very coincidental, but I'm very thankful for it because it gave me an opportunity to learn and play a game that I enjoyed as a player all the way through college, and then now professionally from a management and ownership standpoint.
Of course, we're talking about Dallas, and since that's Texas, there had to be some football thrown in there a little bit. You play some football as well, and
I did. I played high school football.
yeah,
And little known fact, I went to SMU with the thought of playing football for SMU, which was a very optimistic thought. SMU had been number 1 in the country my senior year in high school. It was the Putney Express.
Yeah, Putney Express team.
With Dickerson and James. And I went through freshman week with the football team and recognized that if I ever played, it was going to be 4 or 5 years down the road, and asked myself, was I really willing to make that commitment without any certainty of being able to play? And decided not. And so I walked out of the football locker room, down the hall, and into the soccer locker room. And I knew the coach, fortunately, and I said, hey, will you let me try out? And they were already into their preseason by this point. But because I had the relationship, he cut me some slack. And he let me get in shape because I was not in shape to play soccer. I was in shape to play football. And eventually made the team and was on the team all 4 years. And we had some great teams my junior and senior year.
it's always been a good program, SMU. So I'm probably off in my years here. Oh, by the way, I 2-time academic All-American at SMU, so not too shabby. You would not have. Kyle Rowe Jr. is older than you. He's older than me, so I know he's older than you.
Yeah.
But was he a presence as a figure, a soccer figure? Because I remember him as sort of the first American soccer personality in this country. He's from Dallas, and I'm wondering if he, if you knew him or knew the family. Or
I did. So some of my early sports heroes were Dallas Tornado players, which included Kyle Rowe Jr., who was one of the best American-born players in the league and certainly on the Tornado. He was a forward and he scored a lot of goals and he was a tremendous athlete. And his dad had been a big American football star several decades earlier. So he was somebody I looked up to, very much as a youth player.
Okay. Also, I was hoping you help me clarify that when you finish college and you and your dad are kind of you're sort of getting into the family business a little bit here. Is it fair to say that MLS and professional soccer was more part of your life in the early stages for you than the NFL and the Chiefs?
Yes, and just I'll help you a little bit with these lines. So I graduated from college in '87 and did 2 years of investment banking, 1 year in LA, 1 year in New York. And then I came back in 1989 to help my dad start what is now our family office because he was in the process of breaking his business interests away from some of his other family members. So we did that from about 1989 to about 1994. And in 94, the effort to create Major League Soccer was underway. And so he drafted me, I like to say, to work on the business plan for Major League Soccer. It was being put together by Alan Rothenberg, who was chairman of the World Cup in '94, and Mark Abbott, who was one of his lieutenants. And so I worked with them for 2 years on the business plan. And we were finally able to get the league off the ground. The challenge was getting enough investors who believed in it. And by '96, we had enough investors and we got it going. And I was very involved. We owned 2 teams to start with. And it eventually went to 3 when we acquired what's now FC Dallas in 2001. So we were operating 3 MLS franchises. So I was a little bit involved with the Chiefs, but I was very involved with Major League Soccer there for many years.
And your dad, of course, was the first to build a soccer-specific stadium in the U.S. with the Columbus Crew. And how important was soccer-specific stadiums to the health and the progress of MLS?
Yeah, I think without my dad's bold move to build that stadium in 1999, that Major League Soccer would have folded. Because at about that same time in 2000, the league really went through some hard times. We had a couple of investors in the league who withdrew, just couldn't support their teams financially. And, there was a real chance that the league was going to go out of business. But the success that Columbus was experiencing, in large part because they finally had a building that was the right size, had the right environment, the right amenities. The other owners who were willing to stay in, which included Phil Anschutz and Robert Kraft, said this is worth giving one more shot to see if we can save the league. So Phil Anschutz builds a soccer-specific stadium in about 2002 or 2003 in Los Angeles. Our family comes back a couple years later and builds what is now Toyota Stadium in Dallas, which opened in 2005. And the league then really started to get some traction again. But I have no doubt that it would not have made it without my dad building Crew Stadium in 1999.
Okay, let's end up with this thought. When 10 years ago or so, when it was established that the U.S., North America, was going to get the World Cup in 2026, how confident were you that Kansas City would be part of that?
Just loosely confident. And the reason was I'd had the experience with my dad of trying to get the World Cup here in '94. And to this day, I remember the meeting, standing on the field at Arrowhead with the FIFA officials, explaining to them how we were going to get the width that's required for international soccer because the bowl is too tight in Arrowhead. And ultimately, we won successful. So, fast forward to about 8 to 10 years ago, when we know that the World Cup's coming to the U.S. and the cities are now bidding on being a host city, it definitely wasn't a certainty. However, Kansas City had a lot of things going for it at that point. First of all, we'd had some big events here in the city, including a World Series, MLB All-Star Game. Sporting Kansas City had hosted an MLS Cup in another beautiful soccer-specific stadium. So there was, very much of a soccer DNA and a history of success here at that point. And I think all of that was helpful in convincing FIFA to come.
Here's what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. We'll stay with soccer to lead off, and finally, a good weekend for our professional teams. The Current won at North Carolina, getting a victory on the road for the first time this season, and Sporting KC played to a 1-1 draw at home against the Seattle Sounders, ending a 6-match losing streak. Both teams look to keep it going this weekend when Sporting visits Portland on Saturday, and the Current have a Mother's Day game at home against Chicago. There was big news in college basketball last week on two fronts. First, Kansas received a commitment from the nation's top prospect, Tyron Stokes. He's a 6'7" forward whose greatest strength is getting to the basket. It's the second straight year Bill Self has landed the top-rated player out of high school. Last year it was Darren Peterson, who's expected to be one of the first 2 or 3 players selected in the NBA draft this summer. The other newsy item? The NCAA tournament is going to expand to 76 teams next season. It had been a 68-team field since 2011, and there was plenty of outcry from traditionalists who believe an expanded bracket isn't necessary. And obviously there will be more games. Instead of an opening round of 4, there'll be 12 games played over 2 nights to get the field down to 64 teams. And all this goes for the women's tournament too. The argument against? Well, the event will be watered down with too many mediocre teams, and that's true, but it eventually will mean more money to the NCAA to distribute to the schools, and I don't know of a major sport that hasn't expanded its playoff bracket in the last decade or so. Finally, the Chiefs wrapped up rookie minicamp last weekend. Some 108 first-year players took the field, including the 7 draft picks, looking to impress the coaches. I was out there for both days, and it's really difficult to get a read on many positions, especially when it comes to linemen. But a couple players stood out to me. One was wide receiver Cyrus Allen. He's from Cincinnati and was the 5th-round draft pick. And then Emmett Johnson, the running back from Nebraska, also taken in the 5th round. I'm looking forward to seeing them when they go up against the veterans. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks for listening, and thanks to our SportsBeat KC staff of Gabriela Lacey, Irvin Zhang, and Suzanne Hogan, along with editors Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. Let us know what you thought of the show and send some suggestions our way, or both, by leaving a rating and review. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.